All right, welcome everybody to my Elden Ring tier list video. Okay, we have completed the game, we've beaten all the major bosses, we've gone and found secrets and shit, and now it's time to talk tier list. These bosses were quite an experience. Elden Ring actually lived up to the hype, but did the bosses live up to the hype? I've seen many varied opinions on these bosses, but it's time to give our spicy hot take and kind of throw it into the community's boiling pot here. First and foremost, if you are not familiar with the way I do tier lists, I have 3 criteria I primarily score them by. If they are bosses that I really like the gameplay experiences of, they get a point. If I really like the presentation side of things, so this involves the boss arena, the design of their visual appearance, the music and all that, that's another point. If they have great replay value potential, they also get a point. 3 points is the highest you can get. That puts you into S tier. If you only get 2 of those, that puts you into A tier. If you only get 1 point, puts you into B tier. No points means basically that I didn't find any of these criteria spectacular, but there is a way to get a minus point, which is if any of those 3 criteria is an actual negative detractor. If there's something about it that is so horrendously wrong, in my opinion, that it actually puts a negative point, then that counts against the points, which means it cannot be an S tier boss. But I'll just kind of throw it out there that Elden Ring did good. Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. I'll start with pretty much everything in B tier and then move it based on that. Rennala has probably one of the coolest phase transitions in the game. Overall presentation wise, immediate point. That transition into the full moon with the water, that's just, that's some good shit right there. Gameplay wise though, it has probably one of the most forgettable phase 1s. Phase 1, just, no, it's not that great. Not that great. On the replay value side of things, I think that Rennala is one that would probably be a bit divisive in terms of replay value because I've heard that she has very high magic resist, which means that if you're an int spammy boy, Rennala was probably not as fun for you. For me, though, I actually want to try her on magic builds and such and see how I would do against her. Because I personally just meat blended her to death rather quickly in Phase 2. And it was just a frenetic experience of having to dodge all the summons and all that. So I would say that Rennala has no negatives. And it's just the question as to whether or not the replay value or the gameplay are more of a neutral one. I would say for now, Rennala is a solid B then. Godrick the Grafted. Okay, Godrick. I mean, this is a quintessential early game boss for Elden Ring. I'm very certain that the devs over at FromSoft knew this, and that's why they smacked him over all the marketing. Godrick being the marketing boss, which is, I am the lord of all that is golden. I command thee, kneel. Like, I love the overall just feeling of Godrick in terms of the actual, like, presentation. Music was good. Fantastic phase change. Gameplay-wise, I would say Godrick has just good gameplay in general. He has a few specific moves that just fuck up your summons. He has a few moves that are rather like slow and telegraphed but hit pretty hard. I would say that he's one of the kind of the easier bosses in general, but still provides some good dynamic gameplay. And then replay value is absolutely there as well, because I would say that Godrick is one that would be like on my immediate, like, can I go and just beat him as early as possible and just try out like all kinds of different builds? Yeah, I think Godrick might be either a high A or potentially a low S tier. So gameplay is there. Replay value is the thing. I think it's basically a question of whether or not this being an early game boss, also an optional early game boss, Oh, that is interesting. Godrick is optional. I think actually Godrick for now is a low S tier. Let's throw Godrick up there. I think that's actually, yeah, I think that's actually pretty fair. Commander Niall. Okay, so, or Niall. So this boss in general, I would say, is overall neutral in presentation. I think it's just okay. I think actually gameplay-wise, it's one that I would say is also neutral. I don't think that Commander Niall has anything impressive in his gameplay, and if anything, his parts that are pretty cool is counteracted by the summons. I think that that was Commander O'Neill in Caelid. Okay, gotcha. I think the replay value is also not really there. I think he's overall just a boss that borderlines on a little bit of frustrating, but I think that the only the only positive I could put towards him is his summons are dead, you're one-on-one on him phase 2 gameplay. That was fun. That was really frenetic and exciting. So he's either actually a high C or a low B boss. Oh man, I think we actually put him in high C for now. This is an example of a boss that would have been better without the summons. I think his summons actively held back some aspects of the fight. And then you maybe could have tuned him up a little bit more in some other areas. Loretta, Knight of the Halig Tree. Well, Loretta. Okay. Loretta is a tree sentinel with a magic moveset. I don't think Loretta is that great of a boss. I think Loretta is a reminder that this game is prone to reusing boss designs. I think the magic attacks are fun. I think that the overall presentation and the boss arena just feels kind of boring. I would say that the replay value is actually a negative. So I would say that while I think the actual gameplay is decent, I would say she is a low C. Just an unfortunate example of where, because you have fought 2 other tree sentinels at this point, potentially 4. Yeah, it's just not that great, I would say. Red Wolf of Radagon. Okay. The arena for this boss didn't really feel like it matched the overall feeling of fighting this beast, and it felt at sometimes a bit restrictive, but the fact that the wolf could sometimes glitch and get up into the high points up there was kind of funny. So neutral presentation, but gameplay wise, this is actually a relatively intense fight. I would say that overall, this is something where the gameplay is actually a positive. The magic and the jumping away made this a more it made it more than a scuffed Sif encounter. This was actually a decently fun fight. I would say that the replay value is actually kind of neutral. I think it's actually a B tier boss. I think it goes in the lower side of the B tier boss, but I think the actual gameplay is kind of fun. Godskin Apostle, probably one of the unfortunately most reused bosses, which is a negative in my opinion, but also one of the coolest bosses in terms of the actual overall fight experience. So Godskin Apostle has this unfortunate aspect of being, everywhere, which I would say actually puts it into maybe a negative on replay value. But let's keep going here. Presentation for a actual solo Godskin Apostle fight is pretty good. Not extremely good, but it's good enough for a point, I would say. The gameplay is, I would say, decently hit or miss. Obviously, there's that fun little aspect of the fireball being something that is going to be used whenever you get far at range, but once you just bait out the move, you can then use your flasks just fine. I would say that probably my most fun aspect of the gameplay with this fight is that there's so many windows for this boss, and in terms of how the attacks are brought up, that I feel very dynamic in terms of how I engage this boss. I can parry it, I can get in really close when it's doing its little tubular shit and zipping around and morphing its body and stuff. I can choose where I want to be in there to exploit that. The Black Flame moves are fun and, you know, really, really cool to look at. I would say Godskin Apostle just falls short a little bit in the replay value, but I don't think it's far enough to be a negative. So, all in all, Godskin Apostle is a mid to low A tier boss, I would say. Elemer of the Briar. Oh, this takes me back. Like, this feels like it was so long ago, but weirdly enough, I remember Godrick better in that regard than Elemer, but Elemer was a fun fight. Like, Elemer had a really, really interesting gameplay aspect in that the way he wielded his sword was just unlike anything. Like, this is such a fun idea, and it created this really terrifying aspect of not knowing exactly when you were safe. But unfortunately, I would say in terms of the replay value, it's not really there as much. The overall presentation of this boss, I remember the music was pretty good. The arena it was in was okay. I would say that Elemer of the Briar pushes into that very, very high B, low A thing, kind of like Godskin Apostle. I would say that for me, though, the gameplay side of Elemer of the Briar was more along the lines of the kind of the scary aspects of the fight, but I think it's not. No, I don't think it's Godskin Apostle level. So I think it goes up here at very high B level. It might even be below Rennala. Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. Together we will devour the very gods. Is this just like one of the easiest S tiers in Elden Ring? I think it is. I don't think there really needs to be much talk about it. It's just going to be where are we sorting my Snake Boy up in S tier. Presentation is better than practically any boss outside of maybe Radahn. Like, it's great. The overall mechanics of gameplay and all that is really fun. Really, really good. There is a very terrifying AoE spam attack that he does in the second phase, but it is something that is avoidable based on how you attack it with the gimmick weapon. Overall, though, having a two-phase gimmick boss that is a presentation kind of things more than a gameplay aspect side of things is very ballsy, because then it could feel like it's being dragged out, right? Not with Rykard. No, not with Rykard. Not at all. The one area that he's probably the lowest is replay value because it's a gimmick fight. The difference, though, is that you don't necessarily have to use the gimmick weapon. You absolutely could, do this boss, I would say, without the gimmick weapon. It's probably really fucking hard, but you could probably do it. In terms of actual replay value in general, it's there. It's there. I would say it's not as high as some of the other bosses on this list, but it is definitely a positive point because it is just so fun to get in there and just go ham with this boss with that weapon. I think Rykard is an S tier boss. Fire Giant, I think, is the beginning of, well, the problems, I would say, in Elden Ring endgame bosses. And this is where we're getting to get into the spicy territory here. I think Fire Giant, as far as a fight, not that spectacular. I would say that the presentation, as always, spectacular. Spectacular stuff. I would say that the gameplay side of things is actually weirdly great and not great. Because when you're dealing with this boss, it's so big and it's so awkward with the way the camera works and stuff like that. The Fire Giant is basically a B tier boss where he cannot be an S tier. There could be an argument for an A tier depending on certain things, but I think he has a negative in replay value. I think he's kind of a mid B tier boss. And this is kind of the sad thing, is I think that there are a lot of bosses in this game that are just unfortunately kind of mid. Valiant Gargoyles. Hey, the Dark Souls 1 trauma is back. Remember when I was banging my fucking head against the wall on the Gargoyles because I sucked at this style of game? Holy shit, that was a time. Well, they're back. And they have the exact same, you fight one, you bring it down to half, then the other one shows up, and you have to deal with the gank boss, which, I mean, let's be fair, most gank bosses in Soulsborne games they are not fun. Yeah, no. I would say that Valiant Gargoyles has a flat-out negative in replay value. I would say that the presentation side of things with the waterfall, the arena side of things is good, but I would say that Valiant Gargoyles has also a negative in some aspects of the gameplay. I think that the poison side of things is not well designed. I think that the actual fight mechanics of the gargoyles themselves are not even that interesting. This boss, in the way, even just this model of boss, is something that you face multiple times throughout the world in general. So, I mean, that's also a thing. But the way it interacts with you when you get up under it, which is probably one of the most important things you do for big bosses, he really freaks out. He doesn't really know what he's doing. So I think the Valiant Gargoyles is unfortunately probably a very low C tier or maybe mid tier. All right, Mimic tier. Yay, Mimic tier. We get to fight ourselves. In terms of fun surprise bosses, this is pretty cool. This is pretty high up there. The place you fight him is kind of irrelevant. It's ridiculously weird that you're just oh, suddenly I guess we're fighting him there. He's there. The replay value is absolutely there because depending on what you are, he's gonna be that. So it's amazing, right? Obviously, it's a very easy boss because you know what your strategies are and you have the dumb AI of this boss, applying your moves. It's a funny idea in terms of its presentation and stuff. So I think it definitely gets the pass for being a fun gameplay experience overall. Yeah, I think in terms of the way we do tier lists, Mimic tier actually gets a lot of positives. I think that the Mimic tier is actually, for what he is as a gimmick boss and a goofy gimmick boss, Mimic tier is actually potentially an S tier, but actually I would say an A tier experience there. I would say the presentation side of things is where this lacks in general. It's just okay. Godskin Noble. I think that the Godskin Noble, in terms of where you fight him in Volcano Manor, pretty cool idea. His actual fight with the pillars and stuff is kind of fun. A couple of his moves, I would say, make him not as fun gameplay-wise with the Godskin Apostle, but I would say the actual replay value with him is, I don't know, maybe about exactly the same. I think that the presentation with his is about the same as the Apostle. I think that the Godskin Noble, though, is probably lesser in terms of gameplay experience. So I would say that we're going to put him below the Apostle in A tier as well. He could be high B tier, yeah. Godfrey, First Elden Lord, and Hoaraloo. Okay. This is where I am really curious to see if you guys are going to be disagreeing with me here. Oh, shoot. You guys are already throwing out the easy S tier stuff here. So, Hoaraloo, gameplay-wise. Oh, I'm already ready for the spice here. I think gameplay-wise, his first phase is kind of meh. And part of that is because, well, you faced him before. You faced his ghost version before. His second phase is a lot more terrifying and exciting. But, I'm gonna throw out another thing here. Part of that is because Hoaraloo is a grabby boss. And I don't like the gameplay experience and hitboxes of how this game does grabs. I don't. a lot of the ways in which this game maps out how you qualify for getting grabbed is not something I like. Not something I like much at all. But overall, his actual gameplay experience of his second phase is really good. So I would say actually the gameplay experience side of things is neutral. The replay value with different builds, I would say, is absolutely there. I would say that probably the first phase could be more fun depending on how much of a ranged person you are, because he gets up on you quite a bit. Overall, replay value, good. The presentation side of things is great. Like, actually, like, again, big remembrance boss. Presentation side of things is spectacular, amazingly graphic phase transition, and the actual way in which he kind of reveals a bit of the, oh, I am now a completely different person, even though this is more truly who I was before I became Elden Lord. This is weirdly enough where almost the lore side of things enhances this boss dramatically, even though I'm not really rating it. It is literally the presentation of the boss is his lore. So it was kind of a fun way of seeing that. I would say Godfrey is a very high A tier boss, but is unfortunately not an S tier boss. All right, Crucible Knight and Misbegotten Warrior. This is a goofy, threw together two bosses that are actually quite decent individually together. As far as replay value, this is a negative. As far as presentation, it's also kind of meh. Gameplay is probably a meh to negative. So this is our first D tier boss. This is a classic example, again, of a duo gank boss where by putting them together, for some reason, you actually made the experience worse from Soft. Margit the Fell Omen. Oh, Margit. I would say Margit is probably one of the best early intro bosses in any game from FromSoft that I've played thus far. Margit's difficulty is absolutely your responsibility. Depending on how you approach this boss, you can make it as easy or as hard as you want. In terms of the actual gameplay experience, I'd say Margit gets all the points. Easy, positive experience here. The actual presentation, the cutscene with the way this boss is brought into play here, leaping into the fray there, the transition to using the holy kind of thrown daggers, hammer and shit. Good, not insanely high in terms of that stuff there, but this is where Margit is amazing. Margit is probably one of the best replay value bosses in Elden Ring. I would say that Margit is probably high A or low to mid S. For now, I actually think that Margit is an S tier boss. Starscourge Radahn. I'm not even going to joke with this by putting Starscourge Radahn anywhere close to here. Radahn is probably the best boss in the game. This is probably one of the crowning achievements of Elden Ring. Radahn has probably some of the best presentation and replay value in a Soulsborne anything boss. Like, this is where Radahn just takes everything, just takes it all. Radahn has the only area where you could legitimately say that Radahn has anything wrong with the boss is the actual gameplay experience. There's a couple aspects of being pushed around by the boss's hitbox as you're underneath him, and then he starts riding his horse around and stuff like that. But no. Maybe you don't like the ranged attacks as you approach the boss. But honestly, those get pretty much nullified by the aspect of using the horse intermittently and just using the terrain to your advantage as well. I actually think that the camera is a positive in this case. Radahn is one of the mega-sized bosses that isn't so big that the camera is a problem. And also, it's the fact that Radahn does almost everything with just the two arms. You can actually get up in his crotch, up in there with him, and you can do quite a bit. And yeah, replay value for this boss is insanely high. Like, Radahn felt like, to me, what someone would make if they wanted to have a boss v boss style encounter. Like, we and our, like, festival comrades army or what have you, our squad, we feel like another boss encounter getting pitted against an actual, like, boss. Like, this felt like we were in some kind of mod of sorts of an already fantastic, you know, Soulsborne game, and we get to just go ham. This probably already will be the top tier boss until we get any kind of DLC. Oh, enough simping for Radahn. Let's get into Lichdragon Fortissax. It's a cool idea to have a boss that's inside basically another NPC's, you know, inner world. Really, really fun skybox presentation. When you look around, even though this boss is not super hard, so you're necessarily going to be in there that long, but you actually look around and see the area that you're in, it is really good. It's also, I would say, coming off of the back of all of FromSoft's mistakes with dragons over the years, and it's just a good dragon fight. This dragon absolutely takes the cake for the presentation side of things. The moves that it does are pretty great in general. I would say that this boss does not have great replay value, though. It's just, there's no negatives. This is just a good A-tier fight. I would say that Lichdragon Fortissax goes probably here, or yeah, I'm not actually right here. Let's split the Godskins up a little bit. Dragonlord Placidusax, or Placidusax, yeah. Everything I just said about Lichdragon Fortissax, but actually goated dragon fight. One of my favorite things about Dragonlord Placidusax is actually how aggressive this boss is. This is actually better than Midir. This is better than the Lich Dragon. This is better than our good boy in Dark Souls 1 dragon. The fact that this boss, when it goes into your downtime bit, is phasing out of existence so that you cannot just stay calm and wait for him to finish his thing and do that there. You have to be on a swivel looking around. Absolutely elevates the gameplay experience. I am not a fan of downtime in boss fights. Downtime in boss fights where you're not at the very least doing some kind of mechanic that's not just dodging, for instance, is okay. But if you're just, you know, dodging shit for that, like that's no good, really. But no, Dragonlord Placidusax has the presentation, has the gameplay, and I would say also has the replay value from being just, I would say, a good dragon fight. Not just maybe even a good dragon fight, but maybe the best dragon fight so far. So Dragonlord Placidusax, I would say, is potentially here. Presentation-wise, better than Godrick. Gameplay-wise, for where you're at, I would say about the same. Replay that about the same. Yeah, it edges out a little bit, I would say. Morgott the Omen King. Oh boy, Morgott. Okay, so Morgott. This one, you guys would be probably happy to know this. I went back after beating the game and checked on what does the actual fight for this guy look like? And holy shit, this boss is nuts. This boss is actually nuts. In terms of actually like what you get in terms of like a full solo boss here, this boss looks like an amazing replay boss here. Presentation wise, it was good. I would actually say it's on the lower side, but it's still a point. The gameplay side of things here is one where I actually had a worse experience in my gameplay than I feel like this boss deserves. I should not have summoned Melina for this boss fight. Yeah, Melina's too OP. Yeah, exactly. I thought also it would be for story stuff. Apparently that Melina summon is not relevant at all in terms of story stuff. So, Morgott, in my opinion, basically gets an immediate thrusting up to mid S tier. Morgott is maybe one of the more underrated bosses. Like, I don't know what the community's general sentiment is on bosses, but I assume Morgott is one of those bosses that's a sleeper and is actually like one of the best bosses in the game. We'll see if he stays in the top 5, but I would say Morgott is an S tier boss. Moog, Lord of Blood. Say it with me, everyone. Unos. Wait. What's the actual chant again? I don't want to sound like an idiot here. Moog, presentation. Stellar. He has a slight negative added to his already good replay value because of seeing him, you know, in a very hard to find area, to be fair. Gameplay. Moog is actually in this weird area where I feel like he's dangerously close to being, to going into some negative territories in terms of gameplay for Elden Ring late game bosses. There's a couple aspects of his mechanics that are, I would say, riding a razor's edge of actually being problematic. The aspect of his chant, which leads to an seemingly unblockable bleed mechanic and stuff like that, is something that is, wow, that's a very interesting mechanic from Soft. I'm kind of impressed that I didn't find it that much of a negative, but overall, he's a caster melee boy that holds both sides of things in tandem. He has flight, and yet it doesn't feel like there's too much downtime with him. His arena that you play him in is a little bit problematic at times for gameplay, but it's not anything really, you know, crazy to write home about. I would say that that replay-wise, that's maybe the area where I could maybe see him being a bit of a negative for some, but for me, he just edges up into a positive there and becomes another S-tier boss, I would say. Moog goes, in my opinion, just a slight bit below Rykard there for some of the gimmickier aspects of his design. Look at this S-tier list. It's filling up, right? Well, don't worry. We're about to fill the bottom areas there. Oh, wait. No. Still, we got all the great bosses right in a row here. Malekith the Black Blade. Okay, Malekith is one of those bosses that I'd say has the potential to be the best boss in the game. Malekith is probably, in terms of the two-phase aspect there, that uses the 1 health bar, so already a very big, I would say, aspect. The maximum HP reduction thing is not a negative in my book. I would say it made the fight scary. The only negative gameplay-wise about this boss is all the downtime, because of him flipping around the air and shit. But I'd assume if you were actually some kind of, you know, ranged caster of sorts, you know, you might be able to get some hits in there. It wouldn't be easy, but you maybe could. Presentation-wise, again, it's a remembrance boss. The presentation is solid. It's definitely there. Replay value, here's the thing. Malekith is, in my opinion, one where the replay value is barely a point. And on some level, I'd actually say, do I want to go there? So, Phase 1 feels a little tedious once you know what you're doing. Phase 1 isn't really that fun. Phase 2 is probably way more fun for a melee hybrid build, where you're like melee focused, but you can do some range stuff, which is basically what I was. I think that Malekith just barely edges into S tier. I feel like Malekith is here. All right, now let's go into the not so good bosses. Here we go. All right, Fia's champions. What? FromSoft. Why? Yeah. What? All right. Okay. Y'all are probably not going to be surprised, or some of you might not even be ready for what I'm about to say about Radagon, the Golden Order, and the Elden Beast. Okay. Radagon and Elden Beast is a mistake. Absolutely a mistake. These bosses should have been individual fights. Absolutely should have been individual fights. And no one here with the, there's no way any of you disagree with me. There's no way any of you disagree with me here. In terms of the overall, completely disagree. Oh, okay, sure. Sorry, I shouldn't make broad sweeping statements that are very obviously possible to disagree on. Moving on. Radagon of the Golden Order is absolutely I would say, a better gameplay boss experience than the Elden Beast. Radagon of the Golden Order feels like, I would say, the endgame boss that we've come to expect. Radagon feels like the culmination of this game's experience. And also, I would say, in some ways, is not necessarily one that has the limitations put into his mechanics that would make him just horrendously bad for certain builds. So it's weird because for my tier list here, I absolutely want to take these images of the two of them there and rip them apart. Radagon of the Golden Order does not deserve to be rated along with the Elden Beast. But you know what? Unfortunately, they decided to put these two bosses together. They did. I can't change the immutable fact that that is the way they made this game. And FromSoft, I don't know what you were thinking. Radagon of the Golden Order and the Elden Beast, in my opinion, is a missed opportunity to have the Elden Beast be a hinting at where this game's future will be, and Radagon being the true final boss of the lands between of Elden Ring. And the Elden Beast is a terrifying reality of what could come in the future. But after all that said, gameplay-wise, Radagon basically takes the positives of all the things that you love about a one-on-one fight, and the Elden Beast just kind of shits on that. So, those neutral out. Radagon's presentation, the Elden Beast presentation, wonderful. Wonderful stuff, right? The replay value. The replay value of both of these bosses, I would say, is somewhat of a toss-up. The Elden Beast is one where I don't know if I want to replay him. I don't know. And thus, I'm kind of okay with putting this boss here. Yeah. All right, Godskin Duo. They made this. This boss felt like they were like, oh, wait. Like, no. I want to interview Miyazaki. I want to know which was designed first. Having both of these bosses be together, and then that was done, or designing these amazing boss environments that are unique for the Apostle and the Noble individually, and then they're like, we need a boss somewhere in Farum Azula that could be a little bit of a skill check maybe kind of thing, and we'll just put these two together in here, yeah. I would say that the replay value is absolutely negative. Presentation is neutral, and gameplay is neutral to bad. I would say the Godskin Duo is literally worse than the other duo boss that I absolutely, do not have much interest in. Oh boy, prepare for the Millennia Assault. Here we go. Millennia. Blade of Mikola. We experienced true horror, didn't we, chat? I think that Millennia is not as big of a mistake, actually, as Radagon and Elden Beast. Millennia has one very weird positive after I've got the salt of actually fighting her behind me. Millennia is optional, which makes the replay value saved, in my opinion, because you don't have to replay her. Millennia being a boss that I would say has one of the cooler phase changes, and actually the phase change is good. I'm talking about all the positives here right at the beginning. The phase 1 does prepare you for phase 2. Good. The other positive that I'll say about something that I think most people are going to find as a negative is the actual spammy whirlwind of death. You guys are calling it the waterfowl dance? Yeah. Waterfowl dance is actually not the problem. You can actually dodge it. And I showed on stream after many hours, or many more dozens of times, dying to her, that no, you can absolutely dodge every single hit of this there. But this boss has two fundamental problems. The life seal should not be a thing. Now, if you want a boss to take more time, here's the obvious things there. make the health more. There is no reason why a boss has to have, because of lore or what have you, more or less health. It's all about the feel. The lifesteal could be a mechanic that stayed in there, right? But make it tied to like specific moves. The reason why I think people don't like the spinny death move is not actually just because of how hard it is to dodge. It's because it's hard to dodge and it life steals. Gameplay wise, I would say has an actual like neutral kind of aspect there. Millennia presentation wise is a absolute positive. I loved every bit of Millennia's presentation and face change, and the environment that you're in, it felt really good. The replay value is just flat out, I would say, neutral, I would say. I think we're going to put her at high B above Rennala. I wanted to make a little bit of a statement, but my tier list also kind of made it for me in a very hilarious way by having the Mimic tier being above 3 of the coolest looking bosses in Elden Ring. It's funny though, because weirdly enough, Mohg life steals off of the seemingly unblockable single move. Just wanted to bring up that little bit of logic here. The other boss that life steals for quite a bit is Mohg. I don't know, does anyone really hate that mechanic? Like, Regal Ancestor Spirit. Now we're getting into the bosses that are kind of unfortunately forgettable. Regal Ancestor Spirit probably has the best music, immediate point for presentation. Gameplay-wise, this boss is actually, I would say, kind of a nothing burger with regards to gameplay. It's got a lot of downtime, weirdly enough, because of how much it flies around. Replay value, there's some potential replay value for ranged-based stuff, I would say. I'd put it probably at the bottom of B tier, actually. Magma Worm Makar, the only good Magma Worm in Elden Ring, but unfortunately, a Magma Worm still. I don't even think there's really too much to say about this other than it's a C tier boss, average gameplay, average presentation, and average replay. Leonine Misbegotten, weirdly enough, I really like this boss individually. I think actually has a really good gameplay flow. I think that the Leonine Misbegotten being basically Scuffed Gale, one of the best bosses in all of Dark Souls, like that's just a good idea. Having that moveset essentially ported over to something else where he has a couple other things, where he has the Roar, which gives him extra poise, a little bit of a damage buff and stuff like that. Solid. But as for being a just decently aggressive early game boss, good gameplay. Presentation actually is nothing spectacular, and probably no crazy replay value because he's kind of forgettable in that regard. But I would say he's one of the weird examples in this B tier list where the gameplay is the only thing that's just kind of good about him. All right, Flying Dragon Agil. This is not a good dragon fight. Just rank it as all open world dragons. All open world dragons basically chill right about here. So Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. It's an NPC fight with a spammy magic boy. Overall, I would say the actual weirdly best thing about him is the replay value, because he uses different spells based on, kind of what you encounter with him. So Gideon Ofnir is just a very bottom B encounter. Estelle, Natural Born of the Void. Oh boy. The hitbox creates some really weird aspects where you're not really having a good time positioning yourself where you're going to fight this boss. Yeah, I would say gameplay is a flat-out negative. Presentation-wise, this is actually one of, again, just the Remembrance bosses, but one of the most eerily horrifying as fuck bosses. I'm so glad they used him in the marketing side of things there to basically say how otherworldly Elden Ring can get. Estelle is another terrifying warning, along like the Elden Beast, of what this game's direction could be with regards to the outer gods and all that shit. So Estelle as a lore encounter, again, we are in a very small bite of this world's lore space and all that. For me, Estelle might be top of C. Dragonkin Soldier. Such a fun, random encounter here. Dragonkin Soldier feels very much like they combined 2 boss types into one, and it's not really that bad. Like, it's just kind of, oh, sure, okay, yeah. Dragonkin Soldier, I would say, covers pretty much everything that a decent, I would say, gameplay kind of boss in general. No, I would say if anything, the presentation-wise is kind of where it's kind of a bit iffy. Replay value is kind of nothing. So I would actually put this boss into a mid-C territory here. Full-grown Falling Star Beast, probably one of the bosses that I had the least fun with. Yeah, spicy take. I think the full-grown Falling Star Beast is the highest D tier. Yeah, I pretty much love everything about this list. This is fun. There's a lot of spice to it. I feel like there's potential for it to change a little bit on a second or third playthrough. But, yeah. Mimic tier is the hottest take. Yes, it is. It is actually the hottest take. But y'all, thank you so much for checking out the tier lists. Sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check all the stuff out. And please leave your responses of things that you would change in the comments. I would be happy to engage with you in the comments if they are on the subject of how you think that certain bosses have certain things that make them more interesting and dynamic. So then, yeah. But yeah, take care and enjoy playing Elden Ring.